What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I am here making my preview video for the Miami Dolphins versus New York Jets. It is going to be at Hard Rock Stadium. It is a home game. Obviously, this is tomorrow because I always make my preview videos on the day before the game. So most cases, that's usually on Saturday since we usually play on Sunday. So game tomorrow against the New York Jets in Hard Rock Stadium. It is a home game. And look, you know, this is actually going to probably be a really quick preview video because at the end of the day, I mean, when you look at it, almost across the board, we're pretty much evenly matched. I mean, when you look at league standings, we're pretty much evenly matched. When you look at our previous games that we each played, we're pretty much evenly matched in score and you know, blah, 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 whatever. So, yeah, injuries, we're both really injured. So, you know, it's going to come down to, well, we'll see. I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a second. Let me just start off with the injury report. So, for the injury report, we have the Dolphins will likely be without safety Rashad Jones and center Daniel Kilgore again when they face the New York Jets on Sunday. Both players were listed as doubtful when the Dolphins released their final injury report of the week. So both our offense and defense should be a little bit weaker. We haven't had those guys in a few weeks anyway. So there's that. But it looks like we should be pretty definitively without Rashad Jones and Daniel Kilgore. Obviously, we also know that Xavier Howard has been placed onto IR, and so that's a major defensive piece that we will be without for the remainder of the season. And then, of course, we also traded Kenyon Drake, who, again, just had a really great day for the Arizona Cardinals on Thursday Night Football, where he racked up 110 rushing yards, 52 passing yards, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. So, you know, he was kicking ass, man. And but we got rid of those pieces, so we made ourselves, you know, weaker in that way. Or we got rid of that piece, and then obviously, you know, Xavier Howard's on IR, which is good from the point of you know, injury and making sure to preserve him, because there's no point in getting him hurt during this bullshit season. But then again, next year is not really going to be any better anyway, and hence why I honestly don't think Xavier Howard's going to end up remaining a Miami Dolphin for the remainder of his contract and career, because he's going to end up wanting out too at some point, because he's not going to want to waste the prime years of his career. He's already expressed that. And yeah, so we'll see. Anyway, let's continue on though. So there's that. We obviously got a bunch of other guys that are injured as well. Both players were listed as doubtful when the Dolphins, I read that already. Kilgore with a knee was limited in practice all week, and he does have a brace on, while Jones with a chest practiced on a limited basis the past 2 days after sitting out Wednesday. The only player ruled out by the Dolphins was cornerback Ken Webster, who sustained an ankle injury in the game against Pittsburgh. He's been getting banged up a lot, but so is our entire, you know, defense. And so, but he's going to be ruled out. So he's officially out. So Ken Webster, Rashad Jones, and Daniel Kilgore will likely be the guys ruled out. So that leaves 4 more guys who we'll have to wait and see who are the you know, the remainder of the inactives. So that'll be interesting. The Dolphins listed 4 players as questionable: defensive back Walt Aikens with a hip, cornerback Ryan Lewis with a knee, defensive end Avery Moss with an ankle, and tackle Jamarcus Webb with a quad. Now again, let's notice how the vast majority of our injuries, or at least like 2/3 of our injuries, have come on the defensive side of the ball, because again, and I noted this at the very beginning of the season, that we would see this because of the fact that they are spending too much time on the field and blah, 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 blah. So, you know, and that continues to be a problem. Our defense continues to get more banged up. And so, you know, it is what it is. Akins and Moss were limited in practice all week. Lewis was added to the injury report Friday, but was listed as a full participant, so he should be in there for sure. Webb was limited in practice Friday after first being added to the injury report Thursday as a full participant, so he should be in there as well. Linebacker Vince Beagle, guard tackle Jesse Davis, cornerback Chris Lamont, safety Bobby McCain, cornerback Nick Needham, defensive tackle Robert Kimdichie, and wide receiver Albert Wilson. Again, as you notice, at least 2/3 of that is defensive side of the ball, but we're getting injuries all over the place. All received no game status designation after being on the injury report this week. So all those guys, to be fair, should be good and ready to go. But they are all nursing some kind of injury. That means all of them will be available. Yes, the Jets had a long list of players on their injury report, including 5 who were ruled out. So this will be 5 of their 7 inactives. Wide receiver Josh Bellamy with a foot shoulder. Cornerback Tremaine Johnson, that's a big one with ankles. Offensive line Ryan Khalil, that's a big one, knee with elbow. Safety Rontez Miles with a neck and a hip, and linebacker CJ Mosley with a groin. And so, the Jets have also had massive offensive line issues. That's probably their weakest unit, much like the Dolphins. Obviously, there's been a lot of change and flux within the organization, much like the Dolphins. So they're similar in a lot of ways. The main difference is they're actually trying to win and actually have a win, whereas the Dolphins are trying to lose. And so, honestly, at the end of the day, I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now. I think that, by the way, Vincent Taylor was promoted from the Bills practice squad to the active roster. So, that's another former Dolphin. Anyway. So, I think it's going to come down to the coaching, right? And a lot of people are still trying to argue that the coaching staff is not intentionally trying to lose. Okay, whatever. I think you're blind, or you're just trying super hard not to see it. But this is going to be a perfect game for it, because as you will go, as you'll continue to see, just in the injury department, we're both super banged up. But there's a lot of similarities between these two teams in a lot of different ways. Again, the one key difference to me is that the Jets are actually trying to win, whereas the Dolphins are clearly not trying to win across the board, except for the players. I actually believe that the players are trying, but again, at some point they're going to break, because they're not going to want to, they're not going to want to put their bodies and their careers on the line for this nonsense. Anyway, let me just finish this up. But so just to finish that thought, though, this is going to be a great game, though, to keep our eyes on the decisions that our coaching staff makes. Even small things like if we win the coin toss, do they elect to defer, or do they want to take the ball to start with? Now, I would say the safest bet is to take the ball after half, so that way you can give yourself, a chance to start the second half strong, just in case the first half doesn't go well. Give yourself some time for adjustments. Although, people point out the adjustments. Look, they're not making adjustments. Why? Because they want us to lose. They want us to lose. The coaching staff is literally not seriously. If you've watched the games, even in the ones where we've played well in the beginning, they've just done the same thing going into the second half. They haven't changed anything. There have been no adjustments. None that are noticeable or verifiable or obvious or anything like that. They're literally just except for the only difference, the only change that we see going into second halves is that we get worse. We We come out and fucking lay massive eggs. Our point differential in the second half we've essentially damn near been shut out in second halves comparatively to how many points we've given up and so on and so forth. So if there's been any adjustments, it's that they've gotten worse. They've made us worse. So, and again, like the 2-point, just real quick, the 2-point conversion play in the Washington Redskins game to me was blatant, obvious, brazen. Every single bit of that play was wrong. The choice to go for 2 points, the play call itself, considering there was only 2 blockers for 4 defenders, and then, you know, you're relying on young, inexperienced guys to even make their blocks, be in the right place, so on and so forth, which decreases your odds. Then you had a guy in there, Kenyon Drake, who didn't practice the play at all. The most important piece on that chessboard wasn't practicing it at all during the week. And the fact that, if you know, just based off of how the game played out, logically speaking, you'd have a better chance in overtime. So every single bit of that play. And then the 3rd down and 20. The Dolphins, for absolutely no reason, with like 30-something seconds left in the game, decide to call a timeout, give the Pittsburgh offense time to regroup, figure out what play they want to run, catch their breath, all that stuff. And then they run a 3rd and 20 play in which they blitz 8 guys and have 3 guys at the goal line. When there's 45 yards left to go, super atypical, almost never happens. Earlier in that game, there was a 3rd and 20 call in the first quarter, midway through the first quarter. We ran a prevent defense. So why wouldn't we do it in the more crucial situation, right? And then, with 17 seconds left on the clock, after they do give up a touchdown to make it 14-10, they just decide to kneel the ball and don't even try. And everybody praises Brian Flores' aggressiveness when he's aggressive in stupid times that have proven to only be failures. Like every single one of his aggressive attempts, for the most part, has been a failure. Right? The 2-point conversion, that stupid 3rd and 20 play, the 4th and 1 that he got so pissed about for absolutely no reason. Again, just a facade. Because there's no reason. He was clearly wrong. He was clearly short. It was just for show. Anyway, clearly egregious, clearly obvious, clearly brazen. And so, you know, I think that it's very likely that this game, we need to keep our eyes on that, because I think it's very likely that this game gets decided by the coaching staff. Former Dolphins, because I think overall, as far as the players go, I think it's probably going to be pretty even matched. I think it's probably going to be low scoring with a defensive heavy game, right? There's, you know, talks that this could even be the first, like, scoreless tie, blah, 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 whatever. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we are actually going to end up losing, even if it ended up being 3-0, which could be the case. We might not see any touchdowns in this game, and because they do have a decent defense overall, and, you know, their defensive head-to-head, their defensive statistics are, you know, their league standings and stuff are definitely better than ours overall. I mean, so is their offense. I mean, we have the worst offense and defense in league history as it stands through this many weeks, and we are still on pace for that, which I'll give you more numbers to show in a minute. Anyway, let me finish this, because I'm not quite done with the injury report. Former Dolphins linebacker Neville Hewitt with a neck and a knee was listed as doubtful, and the Jets listed 5 more players as questionable. Offensive line Kelvin Beachum with an ankle, wide receiver Braxton Berrios with a hamstring, tight end Chris Herndon with a hamstring, defensive line Steve McClendon with a hamstring, and wide receiver Demaryius Thomas with a hamstring and an ankle. So there, you know, a bunch of big names, major injuries, and so on and so forth. Also, let's note that, yes, the Jets, again, I was wrong about this. I thought the Jets were going to have a better season, but none of it is to blame almost none of it is to blame on Adam Gase. It's none of it, like CJ Mosley, Le'Veon Bell, those signings, that they were not his decision. He wasn't there yet. He was not the coach yet. They made those calls before he became their head coach, right? The firing of the GM midway through the season, all the turmoil within the administration and the organization, the franchise, none of that was attributed to him, right? All of that stuff, the injuries, he can't control that, so on and so forth, right? So, But of course, people want to sit there and say that it's all Gase. It's because of Gase, which is absolutely absurd. By the way, look, I'm sorry. Doug just lives in a totally different reality. Totally different reality. And for anybody that follows that logic, that says that everything that's going on with the Jets right now is Adam Gase's fault, is absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. How is that even close to possible? Those big free agent signings, how is that his fault? He wasn't there. The injuries, anyway, it's just, I'm not going to go on because you guys know how I feel about that. It's just people literally in the world that we live in today are just, they live in their bubbles. They live in their own little worlds. Maybe it's because they want, comfort and security. Maybe they just, they need to be in that bubble to feel secure somehow. But I mean, look, dude, people just totally live in different fucking realities and see things way different, right? In the thing with Brian Flores, him, and he's not the only one, of course, but him and a lot of people are like, yeah, that's what we want to see. And they're praising him for being aggressive. But every single one of the times that he was aggressive was a massive failure. Massive failure. Yet the times where he was weak, where after that stupid 3rd and 20 play, you have 17 seconds left. You just gave the momentum to them. Why not try? You could get a couple pass attempts. Why not try? But no, they just kneel the ball and run it into the half. Really? Anyway, so let me continue on. Let me actually get to these statistics. So Dolphins are 0-7, Jets are 1-6, blah, blah, blah. It is what it is, right? So again, pretty evenly matched there. It's a separation of one game. But again, that just goes to show you, and I mean, the game tape, the evidence on the field and everything else, going into the season, all of the right, we did a mass purge. They tried to, even though it's, again, a philosophy I don't agree with and that Gase doesn't agree with, he hasn't had an opportunity to instill his culture or get his guys yet. But I don't agree with the big free agent signings and so on and so forth. But they attempted to do that to make their team better. Of course, they, they didn't fix their offensive line, which again is a major no-no. And hence part of the reason why they are seeing the results that they are. But they want to win. They're trying to win. And so I do believe that they will end up coming out of this game 2-6, whereas we will drop to 0-8. And again, I think that this game will come down to coaching. I think it's going to end up being them, calling bad plays, misusing guys, putting them in positions to be unsuccessful, making super questionable decisions, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's going to end up coming down to that. But let's continue on. So league standings, points per game. We have 11. We're scoring 11 points per game, which is 32nd in the league. The Jets are scoring 11.1, which is 31st. So obviously close there. But let's note, though, that we've only scored 77 points the entire season. Okay? The entire season, 77 points. That is on pace to be the worst ever, as far as I know. Last time I checked, 77. Now, obviously, you'd have to extrapolate that over 16 games, which would put us at 150, 160 points. I think that's just under, or would break the league worst or whatever, or maybe by a little bit. I think, because I want to say league were the worst ever, if I remember correctly. I'm gonna have to get this, so next time I'll try and make sure I know that, because I forgot it. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but I want to say it was 170 something points is the worst ever for an entire season for an offense. Anyway. Yards per game, 254.6 for us. which is 31st, and they have 209.6, which is 32nd. Pass yards per game, we have 188.9, which is 30th. They have 145.7, which is 32nd. Rush yards per game, we're at 65.7, which is 30th. They have 63.9, which is 31st. So again, across the board on offense, we're pretty similar, and we're battling for like worst offense, league standings wise, with the Jets. Defensively, points allowed, we're giving up 34 per game. We've given up on the season to this point 238, which is again, on pace to be the worst ever. I'm definitely gonna make sure though to find out exactly what those statistics are, because I haven't seen the numbers in a couple weeks, and so I want to make sure that I have those numbers so I can be accurate with it. But I do believe that we are still on pace for those worst ever marks. But we are 32nd in the league of points allowed. The Jets, 26.4, which is 25th in the league. Yards allowed, we're giving up 414, which is 30th. The Jets are only giving up, it's not that much different, but league standings wise in their place in the league is pretty different. They're giving up 357.4, which is 19th. Pass yards allowed, 253.6 for us, which is 20th. Okay. And then they're giving up 262.6, which is 24th. All right. So there's, maybe an opportunity for our pass defense. I don't know, whatever. Rush yards allowed, we're giving up 160.4, which is 31st. They're giving up 94.9, which is 10th. So obviously their defense is overall better than ours. We'll see how that shapes up. Let's take a look at the previous game. We had 230 yards, total yards. They had 213, close. We had 170 passing yards. They had 167, pretty close. 60 rushing yards for us, 46 for them, close. 4 yards per play for us, 4.1 for them, almost identical. We had 2 fumbles, they didn't have any. We threw 2 interceptions, they threw 3. All right. We were 37% on third down, they were 22. Close. We had the ball for 24 minutes and 42 seconds. They had it for 26:39. All right. We had 5 penalties, they had 10, so they doubled our penalties. In the passing game, Ryan Fitzpatrick was 21 for 34 last game with 61.8% completion percentage, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 71.9 passer rating. On the season, he is 59.7% completion percentage, 907 yards, 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a 70 passer rating. Sam Darnold is pretty similar. Stat lines are all pretty similar. He was 21 for 30 last game, 70% completion percentage for 218 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions with a 73.3% passer rating. And on the season, he's completing 61.5% of his passes for 817 yards, 5 touchdowns, 8 interceptions with a 66.2 passer rating. So the starting quarterbacks are pretty similar. In the rushing game, Mark Walton had 11 rushes for 35 yards and a 3.2. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 5 rushes, 17 yards and a 3.4. Kalen Ballage, 3 rushes, 8 yards and a 2.7. Le'Veon Bell had 8 rushes for 23 yards and a 2.9. Vincent Smith, 1 rush for 13 yards, obviously with an average of 13. Bilal Powell, 4 rushes, 11 yards, 2.8. So in the run game, pretty similar there. Pass game, Devontae Parker led the way for us, 6 of 8, 59 yards. Preston Williams, 4 of 7, 42 yards. Jakeem Grant, 2 of 3, 32. Mark Walton, 3 of 6 for 19. Alan Hearns, 1 of 1 for 12 and a score. Kalen Ballage, 1 of 1 for 11. Mike Gesicki, 2 of 3 for 10. And Albert Wilson, 1 of 2, 5 yards and a score. Ryan Griffin, 4 of 4 for 66 yards, 2 touchdowns. Demaryius Thomas, 5 of 5, 63 yards. Robbie Anderson, 4 of 6, 43 yards. Jamison Crowder, 3 of 5, 24 yards. Le'Veon Bell, 3 of 5 for 12 yards. Vincent Smith, 2 of 4 for 10 yards. So in that regard, it actually looks like their receivers were a bit more productive generally than we were. Just in our previous game, so our game against the Steelers and theirs against the Jags. Defensively, we actually had decent defensive statistics in this past game, although obviously not good enough, but we did have 2 sacks, and obviously at least one of those sacks I think was kind of just a cleanup sack, if I remember correctly. But we had 6 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, 1 interception, and 3 passes defense. Although, again, full context, that interception was delivered right to Xavier Howard by Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph never should have thrown that pass, and that was definitely more of a mistake on him than it was the excellent play of Xavier Howard, which of course we're not even going to have anyway. But again, though, credit to Xavier Howard, he did blanket Juju Smith-Schuster. And again, another example of them just misusing players. When Xavier Howard was on Juju Smith-Schuster, he had 2 targets, 0 receptions, and an interception. Against everybody else, he had, I don't know, I can't remember the exact stat line, but it was like 8 to 10 targets. Like 80% of those or more were caught for over 100 yards and a touchdown. But for some reason, they decided to not, and I said at the beginning of the game, they need to blanket Smith-Schuster with Howard. But okay, if you just insist on misusing him, because obviously you're trying to lose. And again, they get credit for systemically making this team as young and inexperienced and unproven and so on and so forth. That is their responsibility. So I don't know why people want to try and separate that from the coaching staff. It's not just the front office, it's partly them that did it. They had some say in that. Not all of it, but they, especially Brian Flores. He was ahead in that room. He was eyes on the list of players, and he has say in all that stuff. Even if it's not necessarily the final say, he still has fucking say, and he has adopted the same fail and lose philosophy as the front office and everybody else. And then it's absurd to me to say, oh, but no, it's some of the guys in his coaching staff. Like people want to say that it's Patrick Graham that's intentionally losing, but not Brian Flores. Really, bro? Are you serious? Come on. I mean, it's just so illogical and makes absolutely no sense, but whatever. Anyway, but again, statistically speaking, we're actually pretty close. The Jets had 2 sacks, same as us, 7 tackles for loss, 1 more than we did, a forced fumble, so same as us, but they had a fumble recovery, we didn't, but they didn't have an interception, we did, and they had 4 passes defense to our 3, so very similar there. So again, as I mentioned, I think that this game is going to ultimately end up being most likely a low-scoring game. I mean, God, it's so hard to predict. It's so hard to predict scores. I think ultimately it'll probably be really low-scoring. I don't know, man. Like, maybe at most it'll be like 13-10. I think the Jets are going to end up winning it, because I think what it's going to come down to is, again, I think you're going to notice bad coaching that ends up being the decision maker, right? We'll see. And of course, too, there will most likely be people that, even if that ends up being the case, there will be people that try and spin it and twist it into something that it's not and defend Brian Flores, even though it's as clear as day. But this, and here's how I'll end it though. This is a perfect opportunity. This likely could be, maybe aside from the Bengals game and the other Jets game, although the other Jets game that we still have to play is going to be up in New York. So we're going to lose that advantage. We're going to have to travel for that one. It's going to be a home game for them, what have you. So, we're going to, lose that advantage. Anyway, so the odds will be even, less likely that we'll win that game. So this is, besides although the Bengals game, though, that's in Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken. So that's also going to be an away game, I'm pretty sure. So this actually, honestly, could be the most winnable game that we have all season. And so if they, they say that they're trying to win, well, here's your opportunity to prove it. And if there continues to be a trend and pattern of questionable decisions, I mean, it's donezo. It's a wrap. It's fork in them. They are fucking done, because there will just be no leg to stand on at that point. And I'm trying, frankly, I feel like there isn't one to stand on at this point. I'm trying to be as fair as possible, but if there are more seriously questionable decisions in how they use personnel, things from the use of timeouts or the coin flip, even things that are typically mundane like that, and then obviously play calls on the field, or their use of challenges, things like that. All of those things are super important. So if there's more questionable decisions, then it's done. Anyway, so I hope they can come away with the win. Because I want us to win. I do not want to go 0-16, and I do not want to be the worst team to ever exist in NFL history. So I want us to pull away with a win. Like I said, I think ultimately it's likely that it's going to be a low-scoring game that's close. I think it might even, I said 13-10. It's likely to be like 9-6 or something like that, or maybe 7-6, or 6-3, or 3-0. I don't know, right? So it's likely to be a really low-scoring game with not much offense, and it's anyway, not very exciting, probably pretty boring, blah, blah, blah. But you never know, too. We could end up coming away with the win, and I hope so. That's what I want, no matter what. But, I mean, they could try and bungle this up so much that it ends up being, we get, the Jets even end up not blowing us out. I think it's inconceivable that the Jets would blow us out. But, maybe they beat us by 10 points because fucking, this coaching staff throws it so hard. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys. I mean, we'll see. And at the end of the day, if they have a chance to prove me wrong here, perfect opportunity to do it. And I hope that they do. I really do. So go out and do it. Thus far, they've pretty much overwhelmingly proven me right on all of the things that I've said. So let's see what happens tomorrow. It's another opportunity. It's another day. It's another game. It's another Sunday. So let's see what happens. Anyway, with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts from my videos. Make sure you share my videos and my channel with your friends and families. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter @Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.